All right, sure. Hi, thanks for having me, Eric. I'm David Dishy. I'm the CEO of something called LMXD, which is a mixed income and mixed use development business and part of something called a larger family of companies called L&M, which is a 40-year company based in New York, really kind of revolving around affordable housing and mixed income housing, largely ground up. We have a construction company, a management company, public-private kind of space. Um, We've probably built or invested in around 60,000 units, $20 billion, blah, blah, blah. And we do a wide range of things and expertise, both in preservation, new construction. We're, I think, in about 14 states right now. But our sweet spot is, complex, public-private, mixed or affordable housing, throughout the area. I started in sort of city planning and economic development. So I started on the development side. And I think like a lot of folks, I kind of came to realize, oh, a lot of the most interesting decisions are being made on that side of this conversation, on the development side. So I sort of slowly migrated kind of through consultant and more toward working for developers. And then a wide range of fairly global developers, and then L&M in some respects is a really nice balance of kind of what I'm interested in the policy and public-private side of the business, call it the impact side of the business, but also, we're a straight up private real estate company and trying to make money, figuring things out on deals. So like that's a good balance of, it's a fun way to live your life. And pretty much honestly, everyone who's at L&M is kind of probably an urbanist at heart. So we're all real estate developers in some form or another, construction people, but ultimately kind of like the being in a sort of a civic space is part of what we do. Yeah,
Awesome.
LMXD is a brand. Essentially, we've been doing, there's a project, for example, Essex Crossing on the Lower East Side. That's sort of, 2 million square feet, mixed income, mixed use. We have been doing those kinds of projects for a long time. We were very involved with Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group, probably when they first formed, and that's probably 10 or 15 years ago. So L&M evolved from what I'll call kind of pure ground up affordable housing into that mixed income space before we created the formal LMXD brand. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we kind of formalized our business line. So we have a fund business that invests in existing affordable housing around the country. That's it as a business line. XD, in part because we are largely affordable in our reputation and brand, we thought it would sort of be helpful to have a separate brand, LMXD, that's sort of focusing on essentially these are projects that have a lot of interesting affordable components, but are also equity driven, yield driven, traditional real estate deals. So combining traditional real, normal, not normal, like real estate equity based, yield based real estate investments with some of the affordable kind of special sauce that we do. So that's
I
what XD.
was
So XD sort of essentially reflects that. But ultimately, we are part of, when we build our own projects, they're being built by L&M builders or managed by L&M. And so there's a lot of crossover amongst our
Mhm.
businesses. It's an excellent question. I've really come to, as much as all real estate developers are at their heart project managers, right? And I would just love to spend my time kind of thinking about how to design a building and have it be successful. I have a team. We are a team of really smart, thoughtful folks who are really good at that also. So I'm increasingly of less use and irrelevance in that process. And in some respects, I view that as, on your question, a sign of success, right? Like my organizing principle is I have an opinion on pretty much everything, but am I actually adding that much? Like, is the outcome of this meeting or conversation going to be that much better with my input than if I just, rely on my partners who are smarter than I am and kind of will make pretty much the same, if not a better decision? So the answer is I spend time trying to not go to meetings that I've been scheduled to go to by thinking like I'm not really needed there and like let them have autonomy. That being said, I love what we do. And so the opportunity to kind of think through complicated problems is kind of as a group or, is what we do. I would say it's more on the kind of sourcing of the deal and kind of the acquisition side of the equation is where I end up spending more of my time. Sort of like, is this a partnership that's going to make sense for us, both on an individual project and maybe prospectively, and whether that's a capital partner or a property or a deal partner, you know, facilitating that conversation and kind of sourcing that is sort of ends up where I spend, what I'll consider sort of the fun, more creative part of life. That being said, if we're designing a small park or there's a landscape piece or whatever it may be, or sort of some synergy in the civic element of things, we do a lot of culture as part of our planning. So People's Theater, National Black Theater, Hip Hop Museum, Newark Museum, NJ Pack, it's a lot of what we do. So that becomes a fun component of these things. How do you create that sense of place? I would say that the part of that that's been most serious for us at this moment has been a lot of the anxiety in the market around the mayoral election. So I was dealing with a lot of questions from would-be investors or current investors, but really more prospective investors about either saying to us, "Oh, our investment committee has put a pause on New York. The Mamdani effect is we're not going to invest." Everyone's all that, a lot of that kind of negative energy on the investor side. I think it was ill-placed, and I have to be sort of polite about that, but I then spent a lot of this year saying to folks, "Hey, listen, honestly, say what you want about some of the policy elements. This is an incredibly compelling, would-be leader that that the people who live in New York and make New York exciting and dynamic are incredibly excited about. And they want to be in New York and their friends want to be in New York. And so this is actually an incredibly positive signal to the world about New York is an exciting, dynamic place to be. So whether or not you may agree or not agree on the margins about sort of certain aspects of the economic policy, as a pro New York thing, this is going to be really positive, we believe. I mean, that's me as a developer trying to make sure I get investors to my projects, but I actually believe that, it's not just BS. And I think it's proving to be the case. And so I would say that's been the thing for which there was the greatest apprehension and perception of concern. And I think already is being leavened a little bit by some of the appointments and other stuff. And the messaging. So let's be hopeful. As you know well, and people are tired of talking about it, but sort of the abundance agenda narrative and sort of the YIMBY thing for which City of Yes, to their credit, City of Yes was an incredible accomplishment and really both for projects that we were already working on and prospective projects was very impactful, and really kind of helped just, nudge projects in the right direction. So I think that was a testament to the administration and to sort of the team there. I think there were and 485X is a lot of very well publicized challenges to it. I think eventually those will be refined and addressed. I don't think it's going to happen quickly just because legislatures tend not to love revisiting things that they already had big fights about in the fairly recent past. That has been a problem, right? That's going to be a challenge. We did probably had 1,500 units or so under the 421A program. We are now working on several sort of great of the last 421A vested sites, and we're really focusing there. The 485 piece of it is, as folks know well, is challenging. We are looking at trying to make that work. As I'm sure folks know, this whole sort of 99 unit 149 thing, it's a funky outcome and and it's just bad public policy. And so, that's going to need to get solved. So I think without that, whether you like it or not, it's going to be hard to energize some of this growth. There's been some movement on volume cap and other stuff. So there's sort of an appetite for helping affordable housing and help mixed income housing happen. I think a lot of the sort of more mundane disentanglement of the bureaucracy objectives about just getting your application. I mean, these sound like people are bored by this stuff, but the reality is every developer, as far as 421A and kind of having HPD and having DOB kind of facilitate getting those things to move, and there's a bunch of very sort of inside baseball aspects of that, will unleash investment and development, and so however progressive or non-progressive one may be in their politics, the reality is sort of increased supply is good for affordability. And so therefore, and yes, that's a self-serving developer thing, but it happens to be, true. And so helping just energize that production, I think, is time incredibly well spent. And so hopefully it's happening. But again, the 45 thing is not, I mean, you're getting a lot of projects, but 99 unit buildings one at a time is not going to solve the needs. So I think the wave of rezonings were very impactful. These sort of area-wide I mean, you see it every time some area gets rezoned, and all of a sudden 5,000 units get built. Whether it's Gowanus or I used to say like people look at Sixth Avenue or the Williamsburg Greenpoint waterfront. It's like the demand is there, and you're sort of just it's artificially constrained in some respects by being underzoned, right? So allowing that to move forward, and I think the next administration is going to. I mean, I think the signals are they are supportive of that, and we'll continue to sort of think about those kinds of rezonings. It's funny. We joke our competitive advantage is that we try not to be jerks, which for better or worse in the real estate industry is sometimes a distinguishing feature. So, I mean, I say that jokingly, but it's actually kind of part of, these are long-term things with lots of partnerships. I think we try to be thoughtful about the stuff we've already discussed, which is how do I combine mixed income in a way that's both financially viable and also kind of operates well and is sort of an interesting, welcoming thing. So, the traditional 80/20s, increasingly there's more things that have different ratios of affordable and market, and that's sort of the challenge of how do you do that successfully, both in New York and kind of nationally. And I think the world is getting, like New York was ahead of the curve a little bit on this. I think sort of nationally, folks are beginning to appreciate that as, our view of it is, it's actually kind of, and I don't want to get too grandiose about it, like it's better for the world in terms of like mixed both buildings and really more importantly mixed communities and mixed neighborhoods and all those things. And so encouraging production of housing that has that mix at its heart leads to sort of successful projects, and this leads to healthier cities. There is an element of cross subsidy, which is a term you'll hear a lot about. That's sort of, you have an area that's viable as a market opportunity. It allows you to sort of essentially take some of the value being created by that market component and cross subsidize affordable, so that you're generating affordable housing with not as much direct capital subsidy. Because really, affordable housing is just about the decision to spend public money to allow, people of different levels of income to afford the apartment. So right now we've got, actually, we are, as you said, we're very busy sort of trying, we have a bunch of projects in New Haven. We have a bunch of projects in Newark. We have some stuff in Washington, D.C. We closed yesterday on a really exciting project in Philadelphia. That's a mixed income redevelopment of a former public housing site with the Public Housing Authority as our partner. So that's kind of in the XD space, kind of the Northeast. But we are also now, as a company, increasingly doing work in Texas, in Georgia, in the Southeast, in the Midwest. And so often we will begin with an acquisition of an existing affordable asset in those markets, develop some expertise, kind of some knowledge, not be complete interlopers, and then move toward a ground up, either affordable or mixed income piece of that. So we are looking at those markets, we've, and I think that will happen, whether it's in Atlanta or Charlotte or in Austin or San Antonio kind of thing, or Dallas. There's there's two things. There's like, how delusional are we to think that we could be competitive and effective what we do in going to a different market? I mean, I always joke, I'm nervous to go to Staten Island, and like, what do I have to bring to Staten Island, let alone Texas, right? So that being said, we, as I said, are in all these other states. We try to just change not too many variables at once. So you've got relationships with partners, capital partners, and other folks who kind of trust and know us, and they are national, if not global. And so therefore that translates easily, and that kind of reliability translates well. I think honestly, kind of respect for the role of the public sector and the respect for the sort of the objectives that are trying to be achieved and not being a jerk about it kind of translates into all markets. Sometimes, there's a wariness. The thing that we're insecure about being new is sometimes useful and being novel, right? These are markets where folks are like looking for interesting creative stuff, and they're like, hey, you guys are like best in class nationally or in your regions. We would love for you to sort of show some confidence in our market and bring what it is you have to bear into our market, and we'll be supportive, be helpful to you. And as long as you're kind of humble in that dialogue, that's actually pretty exciting to folks. So we get pretty excited responses about that, and then you're obviously building a team on the architectural side and the consulting side that's kind of knowledgeable about the aspects of the local market, whether it's a permitting, entitlements, a construction, whatever it may be, that, you know, supplements whatever we might bring to the dance. And you got to be careful about that. We talk about this honestly all the time in terms of like, are you going to visit? Are you hiring folks who are based in that city? And what's the, I mean, you guys struggle with this, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah,
How do you craft, how do you keep the DNA of the company and the mindset and the thoughtfulness of it consistent, and yet have folks who are savvy and smart in their respective markets? So we are in the middle of that dialogue right now all the time. Look, we take our, you know, historically, we used to refer to ourselves as a double bottom line company. I mean, there's a joke in L&M, like never, you know, never assert or claim or think of yourself as too righteous, you know, in what we do. We love what we do. We think we're making, you know, we're trying to make the world a little bit of a better place, but, you know, we're private real estate developers. And as my daughters will joke, Dad, don't fool yourself. You're an evil gentrifier. You know, even if we're building an all affordable project in East New York, you know, so it's like, we can't really win, but, we are trying, we take that seriously, and that reputational aspect at the end of the day is so much more important to us than any one given deal. And so therefore, you know, the uncompromisable, I think your question was sort of where do I, you know, the uncompromisable aspect of it is kind of the honor and seriousness with which we take our kind of civic obligations, right? To try to be, now again, we're landlords, right? Or we're owners of buildings. So no matter what, people are not going to be happy. And so that's a hard fact, but we try to be thoughtful and do the right thing by that kind of stuff, and sort of say, listen, this is a circumstance that we can't solve. I mean, I'll give you a good example. Sometimes we look at projects that are highly currently dysfunctional, right? And are we going to step in? Now, in some respects, we're like, hey, no one's better than us to try to help solve this problem. But if I can't access the resources to solve it, then suddenly I'm getting into a project that is super complicated, and I don't necessarily have a path to fix it in the way I want it to be fixed or that it should be fixed. So do you do that? Do you get involved with that project? You kind of know you're probably the best to do it, but ultimately it may not be successful. And that's a reputational challenge. And so, and you're not, no one's going to give you credit for, they're going to say, oh, Eric, you did a nice job. Thanks for trying. Like, you're going to be like, what the hell? The roofs are still leaking or whatever it may be. So those are the ones that actually become most delicate for us in terms of existing assets and stepping into those and how to handle that. No, the network is the superpower. I think, you know, we have a notion here that you want a dollar cost average into our cycle of projects, right? So you want to make sure you're not suddenly making a much bigger bet at the top of the market, all right? And that you're making ultimately, however smart we are, part of the challenge of real estate development is we're sitting around talking about a project that's not going to be in the market for 4 or 5 years potentially, right? Particularly in New York. And so therefore, yeah, I have a sense of how things might be, but we don't precisely know. And so therefore, you're sort of, you know, we often say the ones that prove most successful at the time, we were scared out of our minds making the original deal. It's not like no deal that's worked out incredibly well that I think at the beginning of it, oh my God, this is amazing. We're going to make so much money. This is going to work out so well. It's like it happens, or like I think it could work out well, but you never know. And so therefore, you just got to be deliberate in kind of making a series of deals and knowing some of them are going to work. Particularly, honestly, the for sale side of it, I don't know how much your team talking about sort of for sale versus rental. You know, rental is a longer term prospect. The condo business is a very of the moment business. So those tend to attract different folks with different risk appetites, you know? And so that market could be incredible. You know, we love actually what I'll call kind of workforce middle income homeownership. It's just like a different space. We're actually trying to advocate for getting more policy to support that but that's like a, you know, a safer, you know, the middle of the pyramid, not the upper part of the pyramid. I'll leave that to other folks. But those are ones that you can go, you know, the variability in the market doesn't have to be that dramatic for you to lose all of your money. Like that's a thing, not a fun way to live your life.
Maybe on a
or and also, by the way, I'll say on the commercial side, similarly, you know, COVID, we had projects, you know, we were doing movie theaters that we were about to build, or that and all of a sudden COVID hit, and the question is this an insane endeavor at this juncture, you know, and what do we do about it? We had a project where we had a 14 incredible movie theater that we had to basically take out of the project a month before we closed because it was just not financeable. and had to redo all the drawings and all that kind of stuff incredibly quickly, which was not fun because it was exciting to have it, but it was not, couldn't get investment.
No,
No,
that's
it's
good
a
advice.
it's a great question. I actually wish I had more of what I'll cut of the traditional mentor relationship than I see happening a lot. And I think people are smarter about that than at least when I was growing up. But but I've had a series of folks that I've worked with who have been thoughtful and sort of stayed in touch with. I think a lot of those honestly start where these students are right now, which is start at school, right? So these are part of the beauty of work, going to a school in a place where you're likely to work is those professors, whether adjunct or whatever they may be, like they're incredibly good network to have. And whether you're working directly with them or kind of them as thought partners, they are the great first tier in that mentorship. And honestly, even for me, I went to school in the city, ended up working for one of my professors, and then when I went work somewhere else, like so that becomes a great mentorship opportunity. Um, and in some respects, it often is sort of not the person you're currently working for, but the person you previously might have worked for, who's kind of helpful in that. Obviously, the folks that you work with tend to be good mentors, but it's a different dynamic. So they're not necessarily giving the perspective of, hey, Eric or David, like, what the hell are you doing in this job? You need to think about something else to be doing. Less likely from your current manager, although if you're having that conversation, things have gone horribly wrong. But so look, it's incredibly valuable. I would say, as if not more important than the wise older person, is the wise friends of yours who are doing other things. And like the ability, my most useful learning experiences outside of work have been, you know, dinners that we've organized amongst other folks who were kind of in the same place and moment in their career, comparing notes on what they were doing across the board. And so I've had those, and those groups of people we've all aged together for better or worse. And what was where should you get a job has now turned into how do you deal when you're trying to manage, millennials or whatever it may be, or like keep that, compare notes, compare thoughts with that cohort, and it's incredibly valuable. Um, so that's what I would say.